Hello and welcome to Ready Bet Action. I am here with Eric Doran to take you through our Big 12 betting guide and win totals. I am so excited, Eric, because college football is so close.
It
I
is
mean,
almost here.
we're so close and it's so exciting. And at this point of the year, we can all dream and believe whatever we want,
Yes, we can.
And we're talking about the Big 12 today. We've got 4 new teams, including our alma mater in the CU Buffs, who is proudly represented behind you. I love that.
Yep.
We're going to go through and talk about this Big 12. We're not just going to do win totals. We're going to talk a little bit about conference win futures, stuff like that. But before we jump into it, Eric, what are you most excited to see in this new Big 12?
I think this is going to be out of the 2 shows we've done. We talked about the ACC already. Now we're going to be talking about a more competitive conference, which I'm excited how much more top to bottom competitive it is. Although you'll hear my take later. I think Utah will easily win the conference, but I think there's a lot of jockeying for position from second place on down. You're going to see a lot of parity. It's going to feel like the English Premier League of college football, I think.
I like that.
Where you like anyone can really, you're going to see some upsets. You're going to have a lot of wins and losses where you didn't expect them, I think, in the Big 12. And I think the addition of these Pac-12 schools is going to be really exciting. You look at this map like regionally, and it just makes sense. Like, how did we not have this Big 12 before? With the exception of maybe Florida, like you just look regionally with all these schools, and it makes sense to me. It's great.
It's wild, right? But it's fun, and I'm here for it. I think you're right. I think the Big 12, I think Utah and Kansas State kind of separate themselves from the pack, and you can see that when we look at the conference totals. They're both, if you want to pull that up on the screen, they're both. Please do follow along on YouTube, by the way, for those of you that are podcast only
Much
listeners.
more visual.
But yeah, Utah coming in at 320, like you mentioned, K-State at 380 to win the conference, and then Oklahoma State a distant third at 750, UCF and Kansas 950 apiece, and then everyone else that's 1,000 or worse. So just kind of looking at those conference winners, you mentioned that you think Utah kind of is set apart from the rest, and you know what's not a terrible idea is just go ahead and bet Utah and Kansas State to both win it.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to play that a different way. But is there anyone for you, Eric, outside of, the favorites here that you would maybe, as our lovely host calls it, Jen Jones, a side piece bet? Any side piece bets on conference winner futures outside of maybe going with one of the favorites?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you consider a favorite. Kansas sitting there at 950, I really like. I think that's really good value. Being tied with UCF for the 4th. So I'll have a pick for them later in the show. If you want like a dark horse, so if we're talking like dark horse, I'm not going to bet
I think that counts like as a dark horse, 950, baby.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I got one more for you that I'm going to call a dark horse, and I think that's Texas Tech at 1,400. We'll talk about that a little later. Do I think they're actually going to win it? No, but if you're like a Texas Tech fan and you want to sprinkle some on there, I think Texas Tech is a dark horse from like the middle of the pack. What about you?
I kind of lean towards Iowa State, which it's not crazy money. It's at 1,000, but I still like that. I think if Rocco Becht is good, that defense we've seen is pretty tough. And I think Iowa State could be fun. Arizona, I think the players are there. I mean, Ted McMillan is one of the best wide receivers in the whole damn country.
Sure.
Fafita was really good. But with the coaching move with Fish going out, I just get nervous. So to me, I'm not really probably putting a bet on any of the others. UCF is a team that I kind of like. I think they could lead the nation in rushing this year, which is absolutely fun. So this is a fun conference, though, Eric. I mean,
it's super fun.
They could just totally destroy themselves and all be like 7-5 and 6-6,
Yep.
Like it wouldn't shock me if we see outside of Utah and Kansas State, a lot of teams with pretty middling records.
It could be a very cannibalistic conference. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I think that is a possibility.
This next slide that you just pulled up here with to make the conference final is where I really am excited, because you have a lot of, I mean, everyone is plus money. And to me, Utah at plus 120 to make it to the Big 12 championship game. I mean, that means they just have to be in the top 2 in the Big 12. I'm going to take that bet. This is one of my favorite bets.
It's free
that
money.
I'm making.
Free
This
money.
is my favorite bet. I mean, Cam Rising, I think, is coming back for his 7th year. I believe he's like 25, 26 years old. You look at some of the quarterbacks that were in that recruiting class, it's absolutely hilarious. But just to make it to the final game, plus 120. I love that. You mentioned Kansas earlier. Is this where you're wanting to use Kansas at that plus 425, or are you going somewhere else with this one?
Yeah, I do have Kansas, and this is my on my team pick for them. I'll re-go over this when we get there, but I am taking Kansas to make the conference final. I think that they have a lot of potential there. We got Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't read my notes, but
no, Devin Neal's a fantastic running back.
Number 4, 2 guys who I really like, and a very manageable schedule, which we will talk about in more detail when we get to Kansas. A very manageable schedule, I think, for Kansas that is favorable. Some of these guys have some real hard schedules based on their win totals, and that affected a lot of my picks for today.
Well, Lance Leipold is a phenomenal coach. He was someone who we've been waiting for him to get a job offer from one of these power conferences. Kansas came, and he could have bolted and taken a bigger job this last year and didn't. He stayed in Kansas. Kansas's weird thing, and maybe this is part of your analysis, but they are playing some of their games in unusual stadiums this year. They've got 2 at the soccer stadium. I think they're playing at Arrowhead for a few games. So that could be tricky, but that's because they're getting new money put into this program to build new stadiums. Well, one stadium, but like there's reason to be excited in Kansas. Like if Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, he could be the Big 12 player of the year.
That's the big one, man. I was riding him last year for a number of things, whatever, daily fantasy or player props or whatever. And dude couldn't stay healthy. So that's the wild card, I think, with Kansas. I think they can make the conference final if he stays healthy.
I like it. Let's go ahead because we've got a lot of teams to get to. Let's do a team-by-team win total here, Eric. Let's go through each one of these new Big 12 teams, take a quick peek at their schedule. Some teams will spend more time on than others, of course. We don't need to spend 2.5 hours on BYU as far as I'm concerned. But why don't we start off with a newcomer here in the Arizona Wildcats, a team that is dear to your heart because I know how much you respect the University of Arizona.
The University of Arizona literally has the worst fans in all of college. And I don't mean football. I mean basketball, too. I have had so many interactions with U of A fans, especially during basketball season. There is no one worse than a University of Arizona fan. I have many inappropriate jokes when it comes to them. I mean, when you let 90,000 kids a year into your school, like, really, what's the education quality going to be? Anyways, we won't rail on the University of Arizona. We're going to talk about football. Really good team last year, 10-win season. You mentioned this before, though. They lost Jed Fish and the entire staff to the University of Washington. However, they are bringing back Noah Fifita. And I really have their predicted wins anywhere from 6 to 10, which is why I can't actually make a pick for this team because I don't know how big of a deal that coaching staff is. There is a 3-game stretch in their first 5 games that I think is going to determine it. And it's that Kansas State, Utah, Texas Tech stretch. That's a pretty brutal 3 games in the Big 12. So that, to me, I just am deterred to make a pick.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they're probably 2-2 going to that Texas Tech game. And that's a big deal, especially for a new head coach. That's my big reason. I lean to the over, but while I think Brennan is going to be a great head coach, hard for me to want to bet on that right away. Haven't seen it yet. So for me, also no bet, lean over. I do like their non-conference schedule, though. Let's jump into Arizona State. Former offensive coordinator for the Oregon Ducks, Kenny Dillingham, is still riding the ship there in Arizona State. He took over a dumpster fire of a program thanks to Herm Edwards and Antonio Pierce. But Dillingham while I respect him greatly, I think he sees this as you and I see our college football dynasty programs in the video game. Like, we're in it for the long haul, no
Yep.
quick fixes for us. And the same thing is true for Arizona State. I don't think he yet has the quality he needs to go out and get wins. We saw some transfers leave, like Jaden Rashada. So I am actually pretty confidently taking the under 4.5 wins. They don't have a very favorable non-con. Wyoming can be really, really sneaky and tough. Mississippi State is a very, very good team, and then they draw a lot of tough teams in the Big 12. So to me, I'm going to go under 4.5, but I think Dillingham is still the right choice for Arizona State. I just don't think we see the wins this year.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't think I have anything new to say to that, except that, does anyone really believe in Dillingham as like the savior of this program? I don't know if he necessarily showed us any. I know he, like, you inherit the dumpster fire, and as a Colorado fan, I understand you want to be hopeful in your new coach, but like maybe he can put some building blocks in, but I don't see Dillingham as this like long-term rebuild success. That schedule for them, I looked over it many times and could not get above 4 wins. Like, yeah, I really tried. I couldn't do it. So I'm with you here. Both of us under 4.5 wins.
Yep, I like that a lot. Let's move on to Baylor. Dave Aranda, one of those coaches that is on the hot seat going into the season. The over-under comes in at 5.5 wins. So, I mean, basically we're saying, will Baylor make a bowl game? And I think Dave Aranda's job is on the line. Eric, I don't have a play on this. You do. So why don't you talk us through your thoughts on Baylor this year?
Yeah, I do. So head coach taking over the defense. He's never had a defense out of the top 35 when he was a defensive coordinator back in his days at LSU. So the defense should be improved because it was absolute garbage last year, even for a defensive head coach. They transferred in quarterback Daquan Finn from Toledo.
Love him. I love him.
was he? I should have written this down right. I have that he's one of the highest passers. He might have been the highest passer in college football. Someone fact check that, but he's there, great. Like, for tons and tons of yards he throws for. So it should be there. I think the schedule's favorable. I think the schedule's favorable for them to get over this 5.5 wins. I see 8 quote unquote winnable games for them. And for me, that means like bottom tier to mid tier teams that they could be playing maybe home games or whatever. They got a little bit of a hard stretch with Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State, but I don't think getting over 5.5 wins is crazy. I'm going to take the over minus 5.5 with our Baylor Bears. That is CU's homecoming. I will be at that game tailgating for my first CU game of the year because I'll be missing the first one. So very exciting.
Oh God. Yeah, no, that'll be good. And you will be rooting against your pick here on that particular night. Let's head over to Utah. BYU up next. Their win total comes in at 4.5, plus 104 to the over, minus 128 to the under. We are simpatico on this one. We're both on under 4.5 wins. One of the things that kind of is coming in against BYU this year is that they only have 4 home conference games. So that can be tough. They're also traveling to Wyoming, and at Wyoming is a tough place to play. Not so much because the crowd gets crazy in Laramie, but the conditions can be insane with all that wind. They have to travel to Baylor, who I know you like. They have to go and play UCF. They have a tough schedule. I don't like how it shakes out for them. So I'm on the under for BYU here. Another coach who I think is on the hot seat, even though people aren't talking about it. I don't know if he finishes out the year at BYU.
Wow. Yeah, I don't. They take their football really seriously. The Mormons over there at BYU, they do, and unfortunately, they're just not very good. I think this is a rebuilding program that has been independent for so long, and you could kind of schedule who you wanted. Now you got to go recruit against the Big 12. Like, I just don't know if I see BYU being super successful. I think being a religious school is super hard. Just going to call a spade a spade. Like, I think like they had one of the worst portals.
No cards talk for the Mormons, please. That's too close to gambling.
I realize that is a. I realize it sounds hypocritical because Baylor obviously is a religious school, Texas Christian, but they obviously don't operate. I went to the Texas Christian game last year. Those folks, maybe not the most devout out of everyone. Anyways, yeah, I think it's just hard to recruit. One of the worst transfer portals in the Big 12. I don't think they're favored in more than 3 games this entire season when I was looking at the schedule. So that points me to the under at that -128.
I like that. Let's keep it rolling here. Up next, we've got the University of Cincinnati. Second-year coach Scott Satterfield in place here. It's hard for me to get a good read on Cincinnati. They really had a kind of a tough go at it. They do have a fairly favorable schedule. I just don't know if I like Swordsby all that much running this offense. The end of the year could be really tough with Kansas State, Iowa State, West Virginia, Colorado, at CU. You know, like I just think 5.5 wins. If I had to pick this, I'm going under, but their non-con is pretty favorable. And if Texas Tech's quarterback situation isn't sorted out, if Houston's as bad as we think they're going to be, they could already be at 4 wins going into the second half of the season. And then, they just one upset and all of a sudden you're upset. So I'm not betting this one.
I'm not betting it either. I think it's hard. 3-9 last year, 1 conference win. They're just kind of in full rebuild mode. They did bring in like the 3rd highest transfers, but they were still rated really low in the transfer portal. So like they brought in like 25, but they're not very good transfers. Like they're not high quality portal transfers like we're going to talk about with Colorado next. Right. And so they still rated like towards the bottom half of the Big 12 in that area. So I think just with that unproven talent and not knowing if their coach is really any good because he really had a rebuild season, all of that stuff, I think it's just hard to make a bet against a team like this. I do think they have the winnable games to do this, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, now we get into the University of Colorado.
Let's go.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. The most polarizing team in the entire country because you either are rooting for them or rooting against them. Very few people are neutral when it comes to CU. And I am all in on CU from a let's hope for the best. But man, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that between the two of us, we don't have a bet on this. The total set at 5.5, over at -142, the under at +116. And to be honest with you, Eric, that's the reason I'm not betting it because I do like the over here. But at -142, I just can't do it. Not enough value. And I don't really like the alt line at 6.5 because I think 6 wins is probably what they end up with. And so it's just not quite good enough. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this team because this is, I mean, if you could choose a championship for any team in the entire world, like CU is it for you. Like,
it is.
You love the Nuggets. You love the Broncos. You love all these teams, but CU is your heartbeat.
Yeah, I would trade everything for a CU championship. It's unfortunately not going to happen this year. I think we're a 6 or 7 win team with a possibility if the prime experiment does not pick up at least a little bit this year of being a 4 or 5 win team. So it's a really hard bet to make.
High variance team. Yeah, I like that.
We were the number 1 transfer portal. 45 transfers. No one else came close. That's insane. It is a strategy that has yet to be proven out. He is the anti-Debo. Or Dabo. Sorry, he's the anti-Dabo. We love Debo. He's the anti-Dabo Sweeney. And the difference here, though, is that Colorado is bringing in like 4 4-star recruits, and a majority are like high 3 stars, and a lot of them were on the offensive line. It is a completely different offensive line than played last year. I think offensive
line too.
Yep. The front 7 should be great. Like it should, like they're in all, like on paper, this is a better team than last year. I think, can you plug in offensive lines every year and expect them to gel? That's the kind of stuff that we don't know. And I think we're going to have a hard lesson to learn against Nebraska. I'm pretty scared about this North Dakota State game.
Do you mind pulling the schedule up again, Eric?
Oh, yeah. And then I'm honestly, I'm not really worried about CSU this year. Maybe I should after last year, but I think that's a team that actually got worse. And And then the Big 12's whatever. But I think that non-conference scares me the most. I think you scheduled the hardest FCS team who has a tradition of beating FBS teams, and you get to go against them the first game when your team hasn't even played together. Like, oof, I don't know, man. The betting this team just feels too unpredictable. They could come out, they could be 0-3 or 3-0 in non-conference, and I wouldn't bet it either way.
Yeah, I love this team's starters right now, But as we know, like college football, I mean the NFL too, it's like it's a battle of attrition. Like this is a marathon. And we know people are going to get injured. We know people are going to miss games. And what happens when you need to dig deep into your offensive line depth? Like, is it there? I don't think Colorado has the depth. And that's why I'm not betting this. If I was guaranteed a healthy top 22 on offense and defense, like top 11,
Yep.
I'm smashing this over.
Yep.
But because, I mean, they're Shedeur Sanders, who got sacked a lot last year because he holds on to the football for so goddamn long. Just a little bit nervous, but I'm curious to see if Prime has learned from some of his in-game mistakes last year. I expect him to improve as a coach year in and year out. When he was at Jacksonville State, he didn't have very many close games that he had to show up for and actually coach. He didn't need to know the overtime rules because he never was in overtime.
No, it's painful. Yeah.
Last year was a learning experience for him. I expect growth from Prime. And I think that the starting 11 on both sides of the ball are going to be really, really good. We've got Will Shepherd, Jimmy Horn. We've got a fun wide receiver group. I mean, that's the one area where this team is deep. And I think they're going to go 4 wide an awful lot. And it's going to be fun to watch. So CU, I know we spent a little bit more time on this for a game for a team that we don't even have a show bet on. But I mean, it's the Buffs, baby.
It's what everyone's talking about. You got to talk about them. And you know what?
And it's our team.
Anyone who says that CU's not relevant, like that idiot Paul Feinbaum on ESPN, is like, they're not relevant. Yeah, they might not be relevant for a national title, but everyone talks about them and everyone's got their eye on them. So they're relevant and they're worth talking about.
And you know what? Since when is college football just about the national championship game of any sport in the entire world?
Ridiculous.
Like, it's about the pageantry. It's about everything. And I love what Prime brings. I mean, there's an excitement around Boulder, Colorado, starting from last year that like I have not experienced in the decade plus that I've lived here. So I'm all for it. It's great having Prime part of college football. Hopefully this isn't his last year. Although if I could make a bet on that, I would guess he's leaving after this year.
I would do. I would.
Yeah, only because like if he was going to be here for the long term, maybe he'd be recruiting someone out of high school. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have got the Houston Cougars. And man, a win total of 3.5 is awful low. We've got new coach from Tulane, Willie Fritz, who has been, I mean, an outstanding coach, someone we've been waiting to. We talked about Lance Leipold earlier, who came from the group of 5. Willie Fritz is another one of these head coaches that is on the rise, and Houston is lucky to have him. Do they have the talent? Eric, you are on the over 3.5 wins. Why didn't you tell me why?
I'm giving this over to Willie Fritz. I think that's a great coaching hire.
Yeah.
Like, what a great hire. The dude came from Tulane and just ran a great program. They got rid of that joker, Dana Holgerson, down there. That dude was a clown and a half, man. And he was the end of West Virginia, too. Like, anyways, I'm giving this to Willie Fritz. That's number 1. Number 2, the schedule. You got 3 out of 4 of your first games are winnable. You got 2 games at the end of the season that are very winnable. You might have another maybe at TCU. Everything else in the middle is pretty rough, and they're probably not going to – if you're a Houston fan, you should shut the TV off from, like, October until, like, the second week of November.
You're watching CJ Stroud those weeks.
Yeah. And then come back in because I think they will get this because I think that Fritz is a good enough coach. They also have Donovan Smith returning at quarterback. You have an experienced quarterback coming back. So I'm excited. I'm excited for Houston to be better under Willie Fritz. I think a good how should I say this? For the Big 12 to be successful long term, it needs its Texas teams to be elite and good. So I will be cheering for Houston to get better this year and hopefully see them start to take steps towards that. So
you bring up a really good point talking about that middle point of the schedule and then winnable games at the end as well. One of my fears with betting a lot of teams is that the teams give up and they have nothing to play for at the end. But with Willie Fritz in his first year, I fully expect him to have a motivated squad who will be playing for those games at the end of the year, regardless of what their record is. So like that a lot. Up next is a team that I mentioned at the top, kind of a dark horse for me, the Iowa State Cyclones. Becht had a pretty decent year last year, but what I really like for Iowa State, again, the total set at 7.5 minus 115 to the over minus 105 to the under. I think their schedule sets up rather nicely. Yes, they have that game at Iowa, but let's be honest, Iowa is not an elite team. I know I'm going to catch a lot of shade for that. They have an elite defense. They do not have an elite team. Iowa State can win that game. You've got North Dakota and Arkansas State in the non-con. And then you get a lot of your kind of toss-up games. You get them at home. Texas Tech at home. Baylor at home. Cincinnati at home. Those, I expect them to win all of those games. I mentioned earlier that I like UCF a little bit. This Iowa State UCF game is going to be incredible, but the fact that they're at home, give it to me. I'm on the over 7.5 wins for the Cyclones.
Yeah, and they could win, those first 6 games. And then that schedule, though, they could turn around. They could end the season 6-6, or they could end it 9-3. So I don't hate it. I don't hate it for sure. I like your confidence. A lot of people like that quarterback. He's showing up in a lot of top college football quarterback lists around here. So
what I love is that we're halfway through. You were hoping we would keep this to 30 minutes.
Not happening.
We're already sailing over that with the University of Kansas. The win total, a pretty lofty 8.5 wins, plus 138 to the over, minus 170 to the under. So not a whole lot of value if you are fading them. They get to start off the season against a team called Lindenwood, which I've never heard of in my whole goddamn life. We talked a little bit about them at the top. Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, Lance Leipold as the coach. And this University of Kansas team, to me, it comes down to, can Jalen Daniels stay healthy? He has struggled in the past, but that doesn't mean he can't do it this year. What are your thoughts? You are awfully bullish on this Jayhawks team. No longer just a basketball program.
Yeah, we talked about Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal being the real deal if they stay healthy. Man, look at this schedule, dude. Like 7-8. So they could be 8-0 going into Kansas State. How great. Like College Game Day is going to be in Manhattan. I'll make this. I wish I could bet on this. College Game Day will be in Manhattan week 8 or 9 or whatever that is for the Kansas State game, because they both might be undefeated going into that game. So let's say even if they lose that game, they got 9 wins, 10, 11, 12. I mean like they could win. They have a schedule that they have 12 winnable games. 12 winnable games. Am I saying they're going to win them all? No, but every single game they play is winnable. The hardest game they play is at Kansas State. Again, Kansas State probably wins that. But man, this schedule is so good for them. And this is probably the most talent Kansas will ever have. So you better take advantage of it, Jayhawks, because this is your shot. This is it.
Yeah, they really could be favored in 10 games.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Or 11.
Yep.
All right, I'm choking here, Eric. You might need to take over some hosting duties. Kansas State, though, a team I love.
Love them.
Avery Johnson. Listen, when Ohio State comes knocking on the door for your backup because Avery Johnson just kicked him out the door, you're doing okay. I think this running attack with Dylan Edwards and DJ Giddens is going to be electric. They've got a phenomenal tight end coming into his own in Oakley. They've got right receiver depth that they haven't had before. This team could be really, really fun. But if you want to bet the over, you have to get them. You need them to win 10 games. 10 games. This is Kansas State. This is not what we're used to. Love this team, but I can't bet double-digit wins.
If I can pick out 3 losses, I'm probably not like 3 potential losses. It's like a more conservative approach than my winning approach, that I'm probably not going to do it. If you look at this, like they get Arizona at home. Kansas gets to avoid Arizona. They got to play Arizona in Manhattan. They do get Arizona and Oklahoma State and Kansas. They're 3 hardest. Here's the argument for the over. If you don't like what we're saying, they're 3 hardest games where they may or may not, they'll still probably be favored in 2 of them, will be at home. So they might be favored in all 3. So I don't know. Like, if you are a big Kansas State fan and you love Avery Johnson, like, I don't think it's a dumb bet to bet the over. It's just a little too unsure for me. And I picked Kansas to go to the conference championship, so I need Kansas State to lose at least 3. So
yeah, no, and I lean over, honestly, but I just can't make that bet for 10 wins. Avery Johnson, dynamic running the football. Can he throw the football when he needs to? There are questions on this team that just make me feel a little bit uncomfortable in actually putting money on a double-digit win season for Kansas State. Could I see it happen? Absolutely. I could see them winning the Big 12. I mean, there's a reason why they are the second favorite team to do it. All right, we've got Oklahoma State up next. One of my least favorite teams in all of college football, only because of their coach. I have no bet on this one. I have nothing to say. This is Ollie Gordon and nothing else. Like, they've got a good offensive line. They have an elite running back, but Bowman is not a good quarterback. I think he had like 14 interceptions and 15 touchdowns last year. Like, not very good at all. If you need him to win a game, I don't think he can do it. The over-under is set at 8.5. So it is, I mean, you need them to have a really, really good season. They have to travel to Manhattan and play Kansas State. They have to play Utah. They have Arkansas out of conference. Like, this could be tough. And they end the year at Colorado. And Colorado could be playing, like we mentioned, for a bowl game in that game. And you're traveling to Boulder. If Shador's still healthy, if that offensive line has really gelled, that could be a real tough environment. So this is a no bet for me. I'm not confidently on the under, but I'm never betting. I'm never betting on Gundy.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I have no bet. I have them sitting around 8 wins, maybe 9 wins if things go their way. But honestly, if I could pick a future game on this schedule that I think they get upset, I think it's Texas Tech in Stillwater. So when I look at like their potential to get upset versus Texas Tech or Colorado, or even at their last 3 games are upset games. All 3 of them at TCU, Texas Tech, and Colorado, all those teams could beat them if they don't show up. I think Oklahoma State is a better team than all 3 of those teams, but because of that, like the upset potential, and then you're going to lose to Utah and Kansas State. And I can't really. Can we take Arkansas seriously?
I mean, I don't know yet.
I don't think so yet. I haven't done that much research on Arkansas. Probably not. Anyways, there's enough for me to not take Oklahoma State here.
Yeah. Again, and we're not on the under either. We're just not betting this one. All right, up next is TCU. Sonny Dykes, had this team soaring high in the national championship just a couple years ago. Kind of a fall from grace last season. The win total sitting here at 7.5, I believe, unless it's changed. I don't have a bet on this one. I kind of lean to the under. I think TCU has not been able to rebuild the talent that they need from the skill positions and the offense and defensive line since that national championship run. So this is a no bet for me. Lean to the under. Where are you at on this one?
Yeah, I've got them at 7 or 8. I got them around 7 or 8 wins. I think they, and I think 8 wins is a really great season for TCU to get back on track. And again, we need Texas teams in the Big 12 as a Big 12 fan now to be elite. I think TCU starts to get back on track and maybe wins 8 games. Just a little too close to 7.5 for me to actually bet it.
All right, let's move on. Texas Tech, who I think is a team that you like an awful lot. I might be wrong here. Oh no, you are on the over 7.5 here. I don't have a pick on this. I don't even know who's going to be the starting quarterback for Texas Tech, given all the smoke and mirrors coming out of Lubbock. Talk to me.
It's likely going to be Baron Morton, but we also have running
But is
back
he healthy? You know,
that's true. But Taj Brooks rushed for 1,500 yards last year, so they have a heck of a running back to anchor whatever quarterback they have. O-line's a bit of a question. I think they had a lot of transfers going right there. Here's my thing with Texas Tech and betting this 7.5 over is I think the schedule early. I know the schedule is very favorable to them. Like if I count up wins, like I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We've got Abilene Christian at Washington State, which Pullman can be tricky. Then we got first North Texas versus Arizona State, who we're not believers in, and versus Cincinnati, who we don't really love. Their first real tough game, to your point, isn't until Arizona.
They can lose to Arizona. I think they're going to beat.
Yeah,
I think they'll beat Baylor at home. TCU and Iowa, like, give me one game between the next three. Oklahoma State, take West Virginia. So that pretty much gets them to around 8 wins. I think that like they are they're going to be a pain to the top, and they avoid both Kansas teams. Sorry, that was my other point. They avoid both Kansas teams. So I think they're going to be a real pain to the contenders. I think they'll be a real pain to Arizona. They're going to be a real pain. Oh, yeah, and Utah. They avoid Utah. I think they're going to upset Oklahoma State. They're going to be a pain to Iowa State, TCU, and Arizona, and those are not gimme games. So I like them over 7.5. Give me like 8 or 9 wins for the Red Raiders, and I feel like pretty confident about it.
I like it. If that quarterback situation gets settled, if he's healthy, like you said, I like this picking off a lot. All right, up next, Utah, the Big 12 favorite, despite this being their first year in the conference.
Oh, I think you're skipping alphabetical order here.
Well, then pull up the slide, my man. So full transparency, you have it under University of Central Florida. In my notes, I had it as the C for Central Florida. So the irony is, I love UCF. I love KJ Jefferson coming in to join Gus Malzahn. Penny Boone joining RJ Harvey from the running back position. Kobe Hudson, a proven wide receiver that we love. I think I said it earlier. I could see this UCF team leading the nation in rushing. They have a super favorable non-conference schedule. I think UCF can get over the 7.5 win total. It's a favorite play of mine for the Big 12. I just think KJ Jefferson is going to shine. He is like the type of quarterback you want in the Gus Malzahn system is what he is. If he was recruiting in his EA football game, this is who he would want.
I love that. I lean there with you. I honestly wish I would have picked over too, and maybe I'll just bet it with you. There are a couple games I didn't know how they were going to go. I haven't looked up how Florida's going to be, those things, but I'm looking at the schedule now live and talking out loud, and I like this. Yeah. I like this pick a lot. UCF's going to be fun. Man, did you see this is probably old news, but we've been playing so much college football 25 that they put up the national championship sign from their stadium in the stadium for UCF in the game.
I love that. I didn't see that. That's fantastic. That's really great.
Awesome, I think. Now we can move on to the best team.
Yes.
In the
according to the sportsbook, Utah, the favorite to win the conference, and they have a robust win total of over 9. Like the total is set at 9.5 wins, minus 144 to the over, plus 118 to the under. Because of that, you and I both have kind of alternate ways to play this. We're not betting on the double-digit win season or anything of that nature. I'm taking them just to make the Big 12 final at plus 120. You like them to win that game at plus 320. And to be honest with you, if you're going to make either bet, you may as well make both, because you can always hedge that Big 12 because that's not going to be that kind of crazy number. So I like that an awful lot. But this University of Utah team, Cam Rising coming back, I truly believe he's going to be healthy. You've got Kuthi at tight end, healthy again. They've got some sneaky wide receivers. Dorian Singer coming over from USC. a highly touted guy. Micah Pittman used to play for Oregon. Yeah, it's his brother that plays in the NFL, but Micah very well could be on his way. I like this team an awful lot. You know they're going to be coached well. Probably the best coaching staff in all the Big 12. I really just am behind this Utah team. I don't see the value in playing the over at minus 144, whatever it is. So give me to make the Big 12 final at 120.
Yeah, Cam Rising coming back for his 15th year of college football.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. Kyle Whittingham is just such a great coach, man. Like, I am envious of the University of Utah and bringing in someone like that. When we joined the Pac-12 back in the same time, and they just picked up and got Kyle Whittingham. Like, what a great coach. Best team by far. I think this is their conference all the way. Even with some major injuries, I think that they're fine, and they will be in the college football playoff. I didn't look up to make the playoff bets for them. I imagine the money's not that great because it should be pretty assumed that they're gonna make it. But yeah, anyways, love Utah. We'll be at that game this year in Boulder. Not expecting the Buffs to win, but it will be fun to come watch the Big 12 champs.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet. I think it'd be a pretty huge upset actually if they weren't. I'm stalling because I'm trying to figure out what Utah to make the playoff is. You can get Utah at plus 220. That's a great bet right there.
Oh, dude, I would. Geez, I think I like that even more than because I think they could lose the Big 12 championship game and still make the playoff.
Absolutely, especially if they do hit that 10-win total. Wow. All right, we are going to finish it up with West Virginia. Last year, not much was expected. Coach on the hot seat, but they way overperformed all expectations. This year, the over-under is set at 6.5, minus 128 to the over, the under at 104. They start off the year. I mean, they've always got that tough start. I mean, they get Penn State and Pitt, in those first 3 weeks. So super tough. And then they follow that up with Kansas at Oklahoma State, first Iowa State, then Kansas State. All teams we've talked about as teams we love. Then Arizona, who we think could be really, really tricky. Cincinnati will be a win. Baylor will probably be a win. UCF is going to be a tough task. And then at Texas Tech to close it out, a team you've already talked about. I feel like you being on this under 6.5, I may have already stolen some of your juice, and I apologize.
You are fine. I actually think they could lose at Cincinnati. Like, that's the thing is, like, you look at this and like, show me more than 2 games there. I think they beat Albany and Pitt. We talked about Pitt in the ACC. Not super excited about Pitt.
But that's a rivalry game. Even then, you don't know what's going to happen.
Besides those two, tell me which games that they will be like heavy favorites or favorites at all in. And dude, I can count up 8 possible losses right off the bat. And that includes that stretch from Kansas all the way to Arizona. Then you get a little bit of a break with Cincy and Baylor. But then you got to finish the season with UCF, who you love, and at Texas Tech. Dude, this is like a 3 or 4 win team, and that schedule sucks. That's a bummer.
I'm going to be on the hunt for some alt unders for West Virginia, because if the wheels fall off, to your point, it could be a 3 or 4 win season. So let's go out and find that under 5.5, smash that as well, because I think it's not a bad play.
I love that. All right. I guess we could run through this real quick and give you our summary of the Big 12. We will go team by team here so that you see it. So if you skipped ahead to the end of the show, don't forget to follow us on all the socials, YouTube especially. Please subscribe to our channel, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the things. We are going to run through all of our picks for the Big 12. For the University of Arizona, we do not have a bet on that school. We will move on to Arizona State. I am on the under 4.5 wins. Stefan, what about you?
Also on the under 4.5 wins, and we are simpatico.
Awesome. Give us Baylor University. I have over 5.5 wins for the Baylor Bears. I also have under 4.5 wins for BYU.
And I'm right there with you, willing to pay that minus 128 to get it.
Love it. All right. Cincinnati. We do not have a bet feeling confident in Cincinnati, so we will move on. Colorado, also not feeling confident, although we will be cheering for our Buffs the entire season. University of Houston, give me over 3.5 with Willie Fritz joining the program. Iowa State University, Stave, what do you got?
Yeah, we're going to smash the over 7.5 wins. If you want to have a little bit of fun, maybe sprinkle something on an alt over as well, maybe even to make the conference final. I love this Iowa State team.
Awesome. Kansas, give me Kansas to make the conference final as the fourth favorite, likely to do that at plus 425. No bets for us for Kansas State, even though we like this team. Total's a little unpredictable for us. Oklahoma State, same thing. Actually, we just don't love Oklahoma State too much, so no bet.
Same outcome, but because we hate them.
yeah, opposite of Kansas State. TCU, no bet for us either. Team building back. Texas Tech University. I do love Texas Tech, and I will take the over 7.5. And Central Florida, Stefan.
Absolutely love this team. I think they are going to be a type of team that people really fall in love with. Give me KJ Jefferson and UCF to go over 7.5.
Awesome. Then we have the best team in the conference. I'm taking them to win the Big 12. Stefan doesn't quite have that, but
going to go ahead and take them to make the Big 12 final at plus 120. I'll sprinkle some on that plus 320 as a side piece bet as well for the Big 12 winner, because that's just common sense. If you're taking one, you got to take both.
Same, but different. Last but not least, I have West Virginia under 6.5. Going to be a rough year for the Mountaineers. And I think that's it for us.
Yep, that's it for us. As Eric just said, we will be back with you with some of the more prestigious conferences very soon. And of course, Jen Jones will be back steering the ship, helping us not only sound good, make sense, but also she helps us look a little bit better too.
So better.
Until next time, we'll be back with you with the Big Ten SEC next week. I can't wait. We have to figure out when to talk about how badly Notre Dame's going to play this year. We'll get to all of that and more. Thank you so much for following. Hit that subscribe, hit that like. We will be talking to you soon. Thank you so much for listening.